Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. Tons to talk about on today's show. Really excited to talk about the rookies. I think this rookie class is really good, so I'm excited to talk about that. And some really underrated great play. I think some good preseason performers that we have to talk about. But we'll start here. Everybody's heard this story. I don't really want to. We know if you're, especially if you're a long-time Dolphins fan and a hardcore Dolphins fan. I would not even long time, but if you pay attention more than maybe say the average Dolphins fan, you would know about this story. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But obviously, the Tua Brian Flores situation took the world by storm with his interview that he did with Dan Le Batard. I would say that we all already knew this, that they had a terrible relationship. I wish they would have talked about some of like the incidents that we know about. I wish you would have asked them about those to get specifics, like the shouting match or in the Titans game. He screamed at him. I think we all remember that. But it's been well reported and well recovered by the beat writers. I would say the only thing that annoyed me about it was the way the national media handled it. And I thought it was a little disingenuous the way that they described the interview, because I thought that the context of what Tua was saying was important, and everybody kind of took it as if he was directly calling Brian Flores a terrible person, which I don't think was the case, at least in my opinion. And just it was just a flurry of just ESPN and annoying people that I hate already. Just, your feed is just full of that now, especially if you're a Dolphins fan. I don't watch any of that. I hate ESPN. I really do. I hate Fox Sports. I hate all the talk shows with a burning passion. There's very few sports media that I actually enjoy. I would say, not to go on a rant about that. Who does? Honest to God. Like, I can't. I just don't understand how anybody could sit through that stuff. I just don't really enjoy it. So yeah, it was just annoying, as already being annoyed by that stuff to being spammed it about your team, your favorite team. It's just, so yeah, just that's all I have to say about that. We already all knew about it, so it is what it is. Moving on, let's get into some fun stuff, cool stuff. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins release, this is their first line of releases, 2 people. They released Mike White and Jody Fortson. So we'll start with Jody Fortson. Jody Fortson, who looks the part, big guy, very athletic, just not a very good football player. He didn't have a good game in this game. He had that wide open drop that would have continued to drive. And he's one of those guys, it's like, how do you not put it together? But some people are just not very good at the game, or just don't care enough to be great at the game, I guess. And maybe he's one of those people. I don't know. Mike White is I think the biggest talking point for Dolphins fans is the backup quarterback position. And I would say that that's been the biggest glaring eyesore or pimple on the Dolphins roster, has been the backup quarterback. And honestly, he has played as bad as you could. He's looked terrible. And I'm glad the Dolphins made that decision. Who knows if they will re-sign him as the emergency guy. I wouldn't doubt if they did. It's probably more likely than not. And maybe they just want him on a different contract. I'm not really sure, but what we do know is he's not the backup quarterback. He finished 5 for 9 for 37 yards. We've heard many times how hard this system is to learn, so I doubt that they'll go out and get someone out there. It would be awesome if Tannehill was available, or if they were able to get a deal done with him, but I don't know. I will say that the guys that we have in-house, Mike, it has not actually, in my opinion, has never been better than Skylar Thompson. like at all. Ever since we signed him, he's worse in the pocket. Clearly the nerves of a game get to him. I think that's one of the biggest reasons he's, at least a factor of why he's played so bad in these games. Is just like you can see it in his face. He struggled to go through his progressions. Even when he had a clean pocket, he was getting the ball way out of his hands way too fast. And you could tell he wasn't playing loose. And I think the worst thing about his game is the pocket. He's not a very good athlete, and he cannot get out of the way of pressure at all. And he can't even buy himself time in the pocket with subtle moves as a pocket passer. So he's just not, and not to mention the fact that he struggled with accuracy throughout the preseason. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of an easy decision. Skylar is better in the pocket. He's way better at getting out of pressure situations. He's got a stronger arm. He went through his progressions way better. Clearly, he played very loose. The only thing about him that also I hate is, for whatever reason, he also struggles with accuracy when it comes to outside of the pocket. Consistently, because sometimes he'll throw a phenomenal football on the run, and then sometimes he did it in this game. He's thrown probably like 4 picks in his career on the same type of play. Bootleg out, overthrows his guy, always throws it high. I don't know what that is about him, but he should have thrown an interception in this game. He's thrown interceptions on that exact same play before. Don't know what that is. I really don't, but definitely, he looked very impressive in the pocket, going through his progressions and making throws. He looked really good, and which is good because I think this last game, other than like the inconsistency throwing the football, which isn't great, but he has looked good. If Tua did get hurt, I think him coming in for maybe a game or a drive, would I have rather had someone like a Tannehill? Yeah, but at least he's progressing and getting better, and he looked good in this game. So maybe in that situation he'll rise to the occasion. I'm not sure, but who knows what the Dolphins are going to do with their backup quarterback situation. It didn't look great in preseason, and at least Skylar played better. But even the beat writers, have said that about them throughout the offseason, about how they've struggled, with accuracy and controlling the football and throwing consistently. So we'll see what the Dolphins do about it. But at least Skylar looked better in this game. I think that's it for the news. So let's get into the rookies and how they did throughout the preseason. And some of my players that I found that aren't rookies that I thought played really well as well. So we'll start with the rookies. We'll start with Malik Washington, who in the first 2 games of the preseason, kind of disappointing. I was like, it does not as fast as I thought he would be. And he was one of the rookies that I was most excited for to watch. And in this game, he looked like the Malik Washington, who was phenomenal at Virginia. And looked great in the open field. Showed why he was drafted. And has a very bright future. I think, especially with, and I forgot to bring this up, but and we'll talk about it after we talk about this game, but some of the injuries the Dolphins have sustained, he has a bright future as the third receiver on this team. And he showed that in this game, which is great. And it was cool to see him continue to be involved in the run game. But Mike really just wanted him to touch the ball as much as he could. And thank God he wasn't severely injured in this game. But he looked really good, and he has a bright, bright future as a Dolphin. And it was nice to see that, because I thought the first 2 games were disappointing. And one of the things that I thought was disappointing was his speed. I was like, he's not as fast as I thought. And I thought in this game he looked way faster. He was playing way faster, and you could see that. So I think if he had better quarterback play, he could have showcased his receiving skills more. And one of the most disappointing things, I think, of the offseason has been Odell Beckham and him not being able to practice with the team. So if Malik can continue to build on this and get better as a player, the Dolphins might actually have to rely on him as a third option at receiver, especially with some of the injuries that some of the other players have sustained, like Eric Azukama. So it was nice to see him play at that level. The next rookie I want to talk about is Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright has been everything. Like he's been phenomenal. He averaged 5 yards a carry in this game. He had 37 yards, and the run blocking was atrocious. Honestly, it hasn't been great this entire preseason with the backup offensive line. It has been very good, and despite that, Jalen Wright has played really well and has made the most of it, which is great. So I think it's safe to say that they hit on that pick for sure, and he looks phenomenal. And it's nice to have him on the roster because if A-Chain gets hurt, Jalen can step in and take that role and run with it. And he can't do some of the things A-Chain does in the passing game, but he's insanely, obviously very fast, but he runs with a lot of power. And I'm excited to see him in the regular season behind a better offensive line because he really hasn't been able to do everything, but he looks very, very special. So I'm excited to see him in the regular season. The next player that we have to talk about, by the way, this draft class looks phenomenal, is Patrick Paul, who looked great in this game. My favorite play of his, I think, so far throughout the preseason was him getting upset at the false start that he had in this game. It just kind of shows you that he cares and the passion that he plays with, which is great because he has all the physical gifts that you need to play the position. So the fact that he has that in him, that competitive part of him is there. I think that was really good to see that, and he's been by far the best backup lineman throughout the preseason. It's not even close. He's been very, very good in the run and pass protection, run game, pass protection as well. It does obviously NFL competition is different than preseason. It's not even close. So it does. It makes me a little bit nervous. It's like, how will you play in the big stage? But they still have Kendall Lamb, who played phenomenal against the Commanders. But obviously Patrick has a very bright future, and it was nice that the Dolphins hit on a tackle in the second round of all things. But he looks like he has nothing but great things ahead of him. So again, this draft class is looking very good. So there was something I wanted to bring up that I'm just blanking on right now. Patrick McMorris, who is dealing with an injury, but he looked great throughout the preseason. Obviously, the Dolphins lost. I guess I should bring that up. Dolphins lose to Tampa Bay for 14-24, but it's practice. Who cares? But again, Patrick Paul, Jalen Wright, Malik Washington all looked great throughout the preseason, especially Malik in this last game. Patrick Morris is another rookie that has looked really good, especially in this system. Even though it's not really the system yet, but he has looked really good as well. That Ethan Bonner, he's looked good. He's had some moments, but I think he's looked good as well. To shout out some other players in preseason, I think for the rookies, okay, I'm forgetting some other rookies before we move on from the rookies. Muhammad Kamara and Chop Robinson. I wasn't a huge fan of Chop when we drafted him. I was like, all right, kind of a prospect. We're kind of a team that needs players that can contribute right now. But he has shown great. I think he's shown a lot of why he was drafted in the first round and why the Dolphins picked him. I think it's safe to say from what I've seen throughout the preseason, this is not a Deion Jordan, Charles Harris player at all. He has special gifts. Clearly, everything that everybody's been saying around him, from the beat writers to the coaches, and we have some negative beat writers that cover the Dolphins that are super cynical. So it's nice to hear that he has the work ethic, and he wants to become a great player, and he has the physical gifts to do it, like supremely special gifts, and he's showcased that at times in the preseason. Is he ready for the NFL? I don't think he. We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know if I think that's kind of still up in the air. If are we the most comfortable with them? I mean, we're gonna have to be. Chubb is definitely gonna take some major minutes with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips coming off those injuries. So that part of it is still, I think, going to be interesting. But I think the future of Chop Robinson is very bright, and I'm not concerned about him being a bust at all from what I've seen from him in preseason. And I hated the pick, so I was coming at this with I didn't expect anything from him, and I think he's been nothing but impressive throughout the preseason. Now, this last game against Tampa Bay, he didn't do much. I thought the D-line in general, this was their worst performance, but barely anybody played in this game. I'm excited to see what he does in more of a pass rush situational role. I think that's probably going to be his main role throughout the season, and I think he's going to really excel at that. But at the very least, he's got a very bright future. I think his ceiling is very high. He could definitely be a Pro Bowler in this league, definitely be a 15-sack-a-year guy, 10-plus sack-a-year guy. And I'm very excited. So I think they definitely hit on that pick from what we've seen so far. And like I said, I don't think this is definitely not a Deion Jordan, Charles Harris situation. I think it's safe to say that. Muhammad Kamara, who was one of my favorite picks of the draft, he's shown flashes as well. I will say definitely looks a little bit smaller next to some of the, NFL caliber talent than you would. It's wow, he is a little bit small. But he's had a very, I would say, okay preseason. Okay to good. So I don't know. I think it's a wait and see with him. I'm not ready to stamp him either way yet. I think I need to see a little bit more from him. But he has looked good in moments, which is good. But I'm excited to see where he goes. I think it's definitely not bad, the things that we've seen from him. I'm trying to think if there's any other rookies that we need to talk about. Taj Washington, obviously he's hurt. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else. We talked about Jalen. I think this is a great rookie class. I really do. I think this is a very, very, very good rookie class, and this bodes well for the Dolphins' future. I think, which is good, that they continue to be good and not just, be good and be bad for, 6 more years or whatever. They're building, they have really nice pieces that it will be good for young players that will be good for a long time. Really like this class. I think the future is very bright. I think we hit on all of the major rookies. I think they've all looked great. If I had to rank them, if I had to rank the rookies in preseason, I would say one. This is difficult. I would say 1, Patrick Paul, 2, Jalen Wright, and you could say Jalen Wright 1, and I wouldn't be mad at you. 3, I'm gonna say 3, Chop Robinson, 4, Malik Washington, 5, Muhammad Kamara. I think those are my 5 favorite rookies, or in terms of performance. I think those are the 5. if I had to rank them. Some other players to shout out. Chris Bolton, I want to shout out first. I was like, who the heck is this guy, dude? Especially rewatching some of this stuff. I was like, Chris Bolton. It looked really smooth, especially in defense, like pass coverage. He looked really good. Super smooth back pedal. Honestly, some of the best coverage I've seen from a middle linebacker from a Dolphin in a long time. And I know it's preseason, but dang. I was like, especially over the middle. And that's something that this defense has struggled with for maybe 7 years, is, defending the middle of the field. And I thought that he looked really good. Now, again, this isn't against higher competition, but especially with some of the injuries the Dolphins have dealt with at middle linebacker, I hope he makes the team because I thought he looked really good. And against the run, too. But I think the most impressive thing about him is definitely been in coverage, at least in my opinion. Channing Tindall, who honestly, underratedly, under the radar, has had a pretty good preseason. He had 6 tackles in this game. They're definitely using him in more of a different roles. He's not just playing middle linebacker. I think, honestly, I've been very impressed with him. They've blitzed him a lot. They've used him on the edge some. But he's looked pretty good. I don't think he's a middle linebacker, though. I think he's more of a tool player. I think he's just too stiff to be a middle linebacker. He doesn't have the coverage ability, and he should, but he's such a stiff athlete. And I don't think he'll ever be that middle linebacker that maybe they thought he could be, because he is such a great athlete. He's very fast, but I think using him more on the edge is better for him. But he's looked better, which is good. He looks more comfortable in the system too. So he's looked good. Nick Needham looks a lot better. Ethan Bonner, I don't know did I talk about him already? I'm losing my mind. I don't know if I did, but if I'm going to repeat myself, then I'm going to. The Ethan Bonner, a lot of hype in the offseason, if you've been following the team and reading about the team. I think he's looked pretty good. Him and Storm Duck, I think both have looked pretty good. They've done a lot of not zero man, but cover one robber throughout the preseason, where it's just a single high safety, and they've been in man press, and so they've tested them all preseason. They didn't just drop them back in zone and soft coverage. I mean, they were really testing these corners and putting them in tough situations. And I thought out of the corners, Cam Smith, Ethan Bonner, and Storm Duck have all played really good football. And especially Cam Smith. I thought the little that we did see of him, he looked really good. And like I said, they tested him throughout the preseason. And I think Cam has come a long way since last year. And I thought all 3 of those players looked really good. Another player, Brandon Peely, I thought looked really good at defensive tackle. Definitely had his worst game in the last game, that's for sure. Quentin Bell, who's gotten a lot of hype in practices, but didn't really see it in games that much. But yeah, I think for players that I hope make the team that are kind of on the fringes, Chris Bolton is the first one that comes to mind. I don't know what the corners are going to end up being. I'm sure Ethan Bonner is going to make the team. And that position is going to be very crucial to the season because of all the injuries. So it's nice to see the Dolphins have good depth there. Yeah, and they have good depth on the interior, even though Peely didn't play his best football in this game necessarily. But in the first few games, he was really good. So yeah, to wrap up the preseason thoughts, we talked about all the players that I like. Are there any concerns? Here's the thing about the Dolphins and what they've done in the preseason. They held out a ton of players. In comparison, the Falcons, I believe, played a lot of their team. When we played the Falcons, they played a lot of their players. We held out 40 players in that game and in this game against Tampa Bay. Even when Tua played, against the Commanders, he wasn't throwing to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. He was throwing to Craig Kraft and basically Jonnu Smith. So, like, we haven't seen the team yet. But from the backup players, I would say that the front seven surprised me of how well that it played throughout the preseason, even though the last game against Tampa Bay, it wasn't their best game, but it wasn't terrible. They definitely weren't great against the run in that game. But they definitely have, they surprised me, especially the first two games, of how physical and well that they played. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways of the preseason is Anthony Weaver's, I don't know how to, he's definitely changed the culture on defense. It's much more physical from the scheme and the way that the players play, which I think is the best thing that I've seen throughout the preseason. It was nice to see that. I think the things that we didn't get to see is like Jordan Brooks. We didn't get to see if that part of the field defense is going to be better. And Bolton, Chris Bolton, like who knows how well he'll play against better competition on a more consistent level. But so some of the answers that like, middle of the field, is that going to be better with the middle linebackers? We'll see, because that was a huge issue last year. It does seem like the corner situation is going to be better than it was a year ago, with some of the younger players developing, and hopefully Cam Smith can stay healthy. But Ethan Bonner, Storm Duck, players like that getting better, and I think they look really good in this type of a scheme. So, yeah, some of the question marks really weren't answered because we didn't get to see most of the starting players. So that's kind of still up in the air. I think the offense, here's what I can say. I think the offense is more talented than it was a year ago. I think it's going to be better this year. And I do think the defense is going to be better because of Anthony Weaver. And I'm excited to see, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people of how good the defense is going to be. I think it's going to be pretty good. The only thing that I worry about is the middle linebackers, and I'm excited to see that in the first game of the season. But yeah, I think overall, great off season. Really like the team. There's nothing I'm really too concerned about other than the middle linebacker position. Obviously, the quarterback position, the backup quarterback position, isn't great, which isn't cool. But I'm trying to think. I would say the other disappointing thing, and I guess we'll leave with this, is that Odell Beckham barely played. That's really disappointing. He hasn't practiced at all, and you would have liked to have seen that heading into the regular season, because him not being able to hit the ground running week one is kind of sucks. It does seem that the Dolphins are going to be a lot more aggressive defensively this year with some of the blitzing and stuff, which is like classic Raven stuff, which should help them with the absence of, talk about injuries, the absence of Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. But it does seem like Jalen at least will be ready by week 3. But again, yeah, Odell is kind of disappointing. Jordan Poyer coming back off the injury, which is clutch. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I expect both of those guys to play. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to bring up. Yeah, we talked about all the injuries and stuff, so yeah, that's about it. Great preseason. I'm really excited about the team. Like I said, I think the offense is going to be better. I think the defense is ran and coached better, way better than it was in the last 2 years, especially with Boyer and Vic Fangio. So that's great. I'm really excited about the season now. Very, very excited. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.